Hi Tarot Trainees, we are now on to lesson 7 of the course, and in this lesson I'm going to discuss reversals. Many of you will already understand that reversals in tarot are basically just tarot cards that have been reversed in a reading. So the intention with reading reversals is that some of the cards in a spread will come up right ways and other cards will appear in their reverse position. So it's basically just the difference between a card appearing like this in a spread and a card appearing reversed like this in a spread. So I'm basically going to talk a little bit about what reversals may represent and, just going into whether or not you may choose to read them, because it is an option, it's not something that you have to do. The idea of reading reversals actually isn't that old. I believe it materialised in France in the sort of the turn of the 1800s to the 1900s, when the esoteric community in Paris became particularly enamoured with tarot, which I discussed in my Origins and Concepts video at the beginning of the course. And during that time, there were people experimenting with different avant-garde ways of reading what is already a very avant-garde and esoteric tool anyway. And reversals was one of those things that came and sort of popped into existence. I believe it was Atelier who I discussed in that Concepts video at the beginning of the Trainee Tarot course, who devised and developed the idea of reversals and the importance of allowing the cards to do their work in the other direction than has been sort of intended by the meaning of the card itself in the upright position. So the first thing that I want to say about tarot and about each individual card is that in my mind there is no tarot card that is either wholly positive or wholly negative. And I know I've said this before on my channel, but it can stand to be said again, particularly when we're discussing reversals, which are often read as the card being in its negative position or in its unconscious position or in some kind of position which represents negativity or difficulty. I do not feel that any card in tarot is wholly positive or wholly negative. Not even a card like the Sun, which is generally considered to be a very positive card, which is a lot to do with enlightenment and nourishment and joy and happiness and finding out who you are and embracing who you are and all that good stuff. I still feel that the Sun has a warning element, whether it's reversed or not, because I like to think that reading cards in a mechanistic way, whereby you would see a card and immediately say, oh, this is so positive, or this is absolutely negative and it's warning you about something terrible. I don't think that that embraces tarot as a tool which explores and illustrates the whole of human experience, because human experience, of course, is much more complex than that. It's not monochrome, it's not black and white. Anybody with a decent degree of life experience will understand that it's 101 shades of grey, sorry. And tarot should epitomise that and should speak to us about that. So, I do feel that it's very dangerous to read the cards in a mechanistic way, and I do not feel that there's any card that's 100%, let's have a party, this is so great, and there's no card on the other end of the spectrum that's 100% doom and gloom, it's terrible that this card has come up, because I think that's a very dangerous way of using what I consider to be a very deep and profound and exploratory tool. So I think it's a little short-sighted as well, if you get my meaning. The first thing I'm going to let you guys know is how to actually shuffle your deck so that you can get reversals. If you want to practice reading reversals, or you want to see what a spread may look like when reversals are included, then obviously when you get your tarot deck, when you first begin to use your tarot deck, when you unwrap it from its plastic, the entire deck will be right ways up. So all of the cards will be like this and they'll all be in a strict order. So of course logically you need to shuffle them anyway to get them sort of moving and get the order a bit random. But if you want to shuffle for reversals, then I would suggest that as well as shuffling this way, which will be sort of the standard way that you will shuffle if you're a tarot reader, just exactly the way you'd shuffle a regular deck of cards. If you want reversals, then I would also suggest, this is what I do to achieve my reversals and to keep them mixing up and to keep them new and fresh every time, is to take the deck and cut it little by little and place it on a flat surface by placing one of the little piles right ways up, then select another card, reverse it and place it on the deck, then select another card, keep it right ways up, and then select another little deck of cards, reverse it and put it on the same deck, so that you are developing a deck where reversals are in there as well. and then reshuffle again so that you get that nice randomness to it. But basically within that deck now there will be reversed cards, and I don't start from scratch every time. So if I'm doing a reading for somebody, obviously the cards are all going to be jumbled up. So you'll see here we have a right ways up, a right ways up, oh, right ways up, and then the Fool is reversed. There's another reversal there, so it's all very random and jumbled. If I read for a querent and then I put the deck away, I do not make a point of changing all of the cards back to upright. I leave them mixed and random, but I do make sure that I give it a bloody good shuffle the next time, and kind of free it up and allow it to have that kind of fresh energy in it. And I do that kind of little trick that I showed you where you take a little deck and then a little deck reverse and build up the deck so that you know that certain cards are reversed to how they were the time the last reading happened. So the reversals are fresh and the uprights are fresh, if you see what I'm saying. So, you know, I don't go back to making the deck completely right ways up again, but I do just make sure that I keep shuffling for fresh reversals and I keep changing the deck up every time so that the order is different and the cards that will appear reversed this time around may not have the last time around. So that's kind of how I do things. If you want to read with reversals, then make sure that you shuffle in a way that involves those reversals and changes those reversals up. And now I'm just going to talk briefly about a few ways of reading and interpreting reversals in a spread. The most obvious way, and the way that I think a lot of people fear, and this is the reason that a lot of modern tarot readers do not read reversals and actually suggest not reading reversals. They kind of have a little bit of trepidation about the idea of card reversals, is that the most obvious way of reading them is to read them mechanistically. And what I mean by that is when you see a card reversed in a reading, you will be tempted to interpret it as the complete opposite of the upright meaning. And this is a little simplistic and it's far too generalised, and I don't think it really gets the most out of reversals in a spread and what they actually can come to mean. A lot of people that don't read reversals in their tarot readings say that they prefer to allow their intuition to guide them, that they don't want to be influenced by a card turning this way or that way, that they actually want to, when they look for the warning elements in a tarot spread, or when they look for those cards that they feel are supposed to be representing delay or conflict or whatever, they like their intuition to do the talking, they like their intuition to take the work on. And while I agree with that, I feel that the act of performing a tarot reading is intuitive in the extreme anyway. And I think that even if I didn't use reversals, of course my intuition would always be at the forefront of the skill that I bring to the table with tarot. The reason that I enjoy reversals and I use reversals is because I feel that sometimes it just allows me to think out of the box and think in a different way when it comes to how I explore a card's meaning. And I'm also excited to see which cards are reversed, you know, and I'm excited to see how many cards are reversed because of the way that I read them, and I read them in quite an exploratory and open-ended way. If you read your tarot reversals very mechanistically, so for example, if you have decided that in your mind the Sun card pertains to overwhelming joy and enlightenment and discovery of your true self, if you were to read the reversed Sun card mechanistically as its total opposite, then you would be looking at it and saying that it represents complete lack of self-knowledge and complete lack of happiness and joy. So it probably represents extreme inner turmoil or emotional pain or the inability to actually decipher what you are or who you are. And that can be a little bit over the top. And the other problem with reading cards mechanistically like that, in that very fatalistic way, is that often it's not actually helpful to the querent. And the most important thing about a tarot reading that's being used for guidance and self-exploration is that the querent walks away floating. And I don't mean, you know, you need to bolster them with positivity and bullshit them and tell them anything they want to hear. I just mean that everything that comes up in a tarot reading should have some instructive, constructive guidance behind it, and you should be able to utilise the messages of tarot to help a querent as much as you can. So if reversals are coming up and you're reading their messages very mechanistically, then whenever you see a card that you consider to be overtly positive in many ways and have a lot to do with empowerment, if you see a card like that come up in the reverse position, you may be very tempted, if you don't explore the card any further, to just say, oh well, this means that you're creatively blocked, and you know, or this means that you're not right for the job you're going for because, you know, the King of Swords reverse suggests that you're not actually a leader enough to make a good manager or whatever. I think it leads you down a dangerous pathway. So that's the reason that a lot of contemporary readers kind of have some trepidation about reversals, because they feel that the cards can be read very mechanistically when that kind of technique is used. But there are a lot of other ways in which you can use reversals in tarot. One way that a lot of people favour is that when cards come up in the reverse position in tarot, they are representative of a blocked energy. So it's something that there's the potential for in the querent's life, but the energy is blocked, the doorway isn't quite open yet 100%. They may need to explore why they're missing that certain energy from their life or that certain drive. So there's an exploratory nature to it. It's basically about energies that haven't yet come to the fore or are trying to make themselves known, but the querent isn't kind of letting that go into their mind properly, that kind of thing. Another way in which reversals are interpreted is as forms of delay in the querent's life or in the querent's situation. So if a card comes up reversed instead of in the upright meaning, you may read it as a sign that the querent is not doing something that they ought to be doing, or that something that they are hoping for or something that they are aiming to utilise will have a necessary delay to it, or a feeling of stagnation about it, or something like that. So it's basically probably telling the querent that they need to tap into their ideas about resistance and allowance to try and work out why they can't get to that next phase, or it's kind of telling the querent that they can't get where they want to go just yet, that there is definitely more that needs to manifest in the querent's life before they can have what they want or before they can discover what they feel they need to discover. Another way of viewing reversals in tarot is as warnings, and I kind of favour this idea, and it might sound a little bit extreme, but the reason that I like the idea of warning elements is that I feel that in tarot I can intuitively read a card as coming to a querent with a warning element to it. But often I won't, unless it's reversed. When it's reversed, I kind of tend to put a little bit more of a slant on any warning message that the card has for them. And it's not intended to be scary, it's just intended to be a little bit more informative about some of the ways in which the card may be steering the querent clear of any danger, or steering the querent clear of any denial, or any kind of emotional fractiousness that's going on. So just for an example, let me just select a random card. So, okay, for example, the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is popularly kind of thought of as a card that's about moving away from an emotional turmoil, or moving away from past regret or painful times which may have been holding the querent back, and now the querent has decided that they're going to move away and they're going to find a new place or a new situation that's going to serve the person that they are in the here and now, that they're not going to hang on to that pain from the past anymore. Let's say, for example, that this appeared in the reverse position and it appeared in a position like the future, for example, in a spread. I would say that this card, because it's in the reverse position, also brings with it an element of warning to the querent, that when they are moving away from these past painful times, they need to make sure that they have adequately dealt with everything that's going on inside, that they are not just playing at the idea of moving on to a new phase without dealing with the emotional pain that they truly felt and dealing with the emotional scars that they have or the wounds that may still be open. That's maybe the kind of thing I would go for. I'd let my intuition guide me, but it would have kind of more of that warning element to it because it's reversed. So it kind of gives me that chance to explore that side of the card that may be talking about pain, or maybe talking about conflict or difficulty, or the querent's ideas and emotions being convoluted and maybe needing to be dragged to the surface a little more. Maybe I'll just give you one other example. The Ace of Wands, for example, is about the beginning of a new project, that fresh energy that comes into being when you're right at the start of a new direction, or you feel that that new seed is being sown. So it's about that excitement and it's about that fresh dynamism and imagination, but maybe not without that direction to it yet, but it's all sort of very new and exciting. If this was to appear in the reverse position, let's say that it was in the position of let's say it's an advice card, because I like to draw 3 advice cards for every spread that I do, and I'll get into that in the next video. If it was an advice card, I would say that because it appears in the reverse position, all of the original meaning of the card still stands. But I would say that it's also important, with it appearing in the reverse position, that the querent takes care that they don't rush into something that they haven't thought through, or that they make sure that they have the necessary energy in them to actually begin a new project. perhaps they ought to be wary of the kind of area they're going into, or maybe they need to recognise their own creative potential before they go into a collaborative project, so they can make sure that they really have a strong enough foundation to carry through into the amount of work that needs to manifest. So again, if you see what I mean, I'm bringing a warning element into it, and it's only in an advisory capacity. It's not to freak the querent out or anything like that. I just see reversals as a chance to kind of put that other spin on it, where I may give the querent some cautionary advice, if you like. Another way that people can use reversals is to assign a certain level of significance to the cards. And this is something that is not maybe quite such a popular technique, but I have heard of it being used. Some people decide that if a card appears in the reverse position, it means that the meaning or the message that it carries is less relevant or less significant, but is kind of more of a background echo at the moment for the querent. So the cards that appear upright have the most significance, or their advice kind of comes to the fore. Their advice is more potent, and the reverse cards are kind of more of background echoes from spirit to kind of say, remember this as well, or this is coming, kind of thing. And some people put it the other way around as well. They see the upright cards as kind of a representation of what's already kind of conscious and what's already going on, what's already under control, and then they might see the reversed meaning, the reverse cards, as having a more potent meaning or a more important meaning, or something that they really need to pick out of the reading and focus on, because the fact that it's reversed gives it more of a significance. So that's another way that I suppose you could go with it. And that kind of lends as well into extremity with the reversals, that some people do consider a reversal to be the more extreme end of the upright meaning. So instead of reversing the meaning completely and saying, oh, the sun in the opposite, in the reversed, means doom and gloom and misery and tragedy, you could instead see the sun reversed as being the extreme of the meaning of the sun. So, it's extreme happiness, it's overwhelming positive transformation, that kind of thing. So sometimes reversals are also considered to be the extreme end of whatever the upright meaning represented. So what I would say, now that you've learned a little bit more about different ways that you can utilise and interpret the reversals in tarot, is basically just, if you haven't already, to do some work to decide how you feel about reversals and how you feel about when they come up in spreads, and how easy it is for you to interpret them and to give them the space that they need to do their job. And remember, it's completely optional to have reversals in your readings. You do not need to do it, and a great many readers don't. A great many readers find, and I suppose I might as well if I dropped the reversals, if I stopped doing them, I would find as well that my intuition would guide me appropriately with regard to which cards deserve more of a warning element to them, or which cards represent a blocked energy. That's something that intuition can help you along with anyway, and you do not need reversals to do that for you. But for me, I just feel that they add flavour, and as I said, they give me a chance to explore in a richer context some of the areas or faces or sides to the card that I may not always decide to wander into with a querent if the card appears in the upright position, because I may be going for more of the textbook meaning, whereas if it's reversed, I feel that sometimes it lets me stretch my legs with the card, and it kind of reminds me to tap into other messages which might be either a little bit more obscure or obtuse, or may kind of pander more to the negative aspects, so warnings and guidance and advice for times when things aren't going so well. So yeah, I just think it adds flavour, I think it adds spice, and that's why I use them, but you do not have to. What I would suggest you do is, as I mentioned in a previous video, the importance of practice spreads is invaluable, and I hope that you've all been getting on with some practice spreads and kind of practicing the way you talk about tarot, the way you link the cards together and that kind of thing. So now just basically continue with that work, but place reversals into the mix. Do some readings where reversals are not there, and some readings where reversals are there, and just explore really how seeing a card in its reverse position makes you feel. How does it make you relate to the card? Does it kind of bring up any fear inside you or any trepidation inside you when you see a card reversed? Is that something that you may need to deal with in order to use reversals constructively, or do you maybe feel that it just means that reversals aren't right for you and that you want to go on with the deck in its upright state without adding reversals into the mix? It's a really, really personal choice, and it's one that you need to come to on your own, but it's also one part in the tarot journey that I feel we can really love the struggle, as I like to say, when it comes to anything to do with learning skills or the spiritual journey or anything of that nature. I feel that it's really important to love the struggle. We can look at a decision we have to make and think, this is such a burden to me, this is such a grievance, I don't know what's going on, I'm completely lost, I'm not sure, I want someone to tell me, but nobody can. Or we can look at the pathway and think, this is going to be long and challenging and exciting, and I'm going to unravel so much about myself and what I want out of this through going on this journey, which I could see as arduous and stressful, or I could see as something where the travelling is much more important than the arriving, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's it for reversals, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below or email me, and take care everybody, and blessed be.